There we are. Good morning and welcome to the Grants Pass Center for Spiritual Living. I'm so glad you're here. Look at all the sunshiny faces. Yay! Well, we have just a little bit of business to attend to first. We had a foundations class a couple months ago. Actually, this is from November, and we just got our certificates. Foundations is the very basic class of what we teach. It's a class where you get to really understand what the principles are here that we are all about, how it's done unto you as you believe. And it's a place where you can change your belief. What is a belief? It's an idea that you have thought over and over again. And as we change that belief, our life changes. So I'd like to acknowledge the people that have taken foundations this last time. And there's a couple of people that aren't here. Angelina Torsney. Let's hear it for her. She can't be here today, but she completed the class. And as I call your name, come on up. Leona Flansburgh. Leona. Yay. Blessings to you.
Thank you. Oh, I didn't have to go up those steps.
No. Thank you. You can have a seat. Paula Bennett, come on down. Blessings to you. Ralph Peterson. It's good to have some male energy in the room, yeah? But it's also good to have the goddess. Susan Clayton Goldner, who's not here today, but we'll save that for her. Let's hear it. And Terry Zamzo. Yay! Glad you're here. Let's hear it for our foundations class. And we have so many classes. I mean, if you're bored, it's not our fault. If you're bored, it means you're boring. No, sorry. No, boredom is squandered serenity, is what I've heard it called. It's squandered serenity. It means if you're bored, it's because you haven't found what your life essence is. It means just to look further, look deeper. You will find why you're here. So today is the last Sunday in January. January is traditionally where most of our centers talk about the first 4 chapters of the textbook, the basics of Science of Mind. And this textbook here, our Science of Mind textbook, dressed up to look like a biblical text because it is my biblical text. I mean, I read this, God, all the time. Not all the time, but I mean, when I have questions, I look in here and I find answers. Sometimes when I look in the Bible, I look for answers, I find more questions. But that's just me. That's just me. That's just but my teaching. I have found answers in there, though. But the first 4 chapters of the textbook are like this much. So don't be intimidated by this textbook. So the first 4 chapters of this textbook are chapter 1, the thing itself. What is the thing itself? It's everything that is. There's not a spot where God is not. That means in everything, as everything, is the same power. There can't be less in one than in another. It's just not being utilized or accessed or understood in the correct way. Chapter 2, the way it works. How does it work? It works by mirroring exactly our belief. So if you believe it doesn't work, it shows up in your life by not working. And then you go, I knew this stuff didn't work. Think about it. But once you believe that there is a power that you can access that creates worlds, you will create worlds within your world. That's how the power works. chapter 3, what it does. It matches our thinking of where we are in consciousness. So it's important to know where we are in consciousness. Just like if you're going on an adventure and you're out in the wilderness in a place you haven't been before and you don't have a map or your GPS isn't working and you become lost, right? What is being lost? You just don't know where you are. Don't get more lost. What do they say when you're lost? Don't move. Because you could get more lost. In life, if you're lost, don't get more lost. Find out where you are. And I'm going to give you some tools today to understand where you are. And that brings us to how to use it. So it starts with knowing where you are in consciousness. And I want to give some credit to where some of these ideas came from. Dr. Michael Beckwith from the Agape International Center for Truth, or whatever he's calling it this week, the Agape Church, which is one of our alumni churches, they call it, where he's gotten so big that he's just started his own movement. But he still uses New Thought, Ancient Wisdom, which is a timeless teaching that we're using today. So, where are you? Where are you in consciousness? Where are you in your life? Do you feel that your life is going on a wonderful trajectory? Or is it possible that you feel like you're kind of starting some things over? Or are you completely in the wilderness? And it's okay. This isn't a judgment call. This is just to know where we're going, we need to know where we are. So there's 4 stages of spiritual consciousness, but let me preface this by saying that there are as many stages of consciousness as there are people in the world. Just as there are as many spirituality paths as there are people in the world. There are as many religions as there are people in the world. Because if you ask, you'll never get the same question or answer from that question. No matter who you ask, they'll tell you something different. Because it's theirs, and it should be yours. And your spirituality should move you. And if it doesn't move you, you should move your spirituality. Truly. If your religion doesn't move you in the direction of your dreams, you should move your spirituality. That's what moved me into this teaching, is that traditional, not to say it's good or bad or high or low, it just wasn't for me. It just didn't resonate with me. So I had to move into this teaching because I was like, there's a church that believes this stuff that I believe. There's actually 500 churches here worldwide that believe this stuff and growing. We're growing in consciousness because this works for me. So I want to address the 4 stages, but know that there are stages within the stages. There are stages between the stages, and rather than looking at a stair step, I want you to look at it as a disc that you may step in different places at different times in your life or different times of the day. I mean, I can be very high consciousness in the evening where in the morning I just couldn't put a sentence together. Or in the morning of your life, possibly when you were young in spirituality, you didn't understand how the principles worked. So let me start with saying that the very basic stage 1 consciousness is called the victim consciousness. You know, it's always happening to me. You know, they always do it to me. To me. You know, if the stars weren't perfectly in line and I was off my game, they're going after me. I'm the victim here. Don't you know it always happens? We ever been there? Where it's like the to-me consciousness. That there's us and them. Or us and it. The power of God. God is everywhere present fully. It's not less in some and more than in others. Everyone is chosen, but few choose. You know what I'm saying? We all have the same choice, the same energy to choose, but there's not everyone chooses the same experience. That's why we find ourselves that I was very much in victim consciousness when I walked into this energetic. I was like, I thought that everyone was against me, everyone was out to get me. There was a conspiracy to ruin my life. And my ex-girlfriend was head of that conspiracy. Right? She was educating everyone on how terrible I was. That's just where I was in consciousness. But as I started to come into these rooms and started to look at our textbook and started to play with these ideas, I found that there are laws of the universe that work a certain way, which brings us to our level 2 consciousness, which is the manipulator or the manifester consciousness. You start to understand that there are laws in the universe that work certain ways. Just like if you were in an art class, you would start to learn that if you combine 2 colors, you could get a 3rd color. Or if you were in a math class, if you combine 2 numbers, you would create a 3rd number, depending on if you were using addition or subtraction or multiplication. But if you used that law, you would get certain results. And there are laws that work in the metaphysical realm. Like attracts like. If you think positively, and what's the best that can happen, usually you'll start to attract the best that can happen. You will start to attract things that are positive, because that's the way the law works. If we were set on this earth plane to destroy ourselves, we would have done so a long time ago, I think. I mean, you can look and see, and every age has had a time when they could have done that, but it just didn't happen because good prevailed. Somehow, good has prevailed. So there's a law of gravity that if we drop something, it will fall to earth. And we can work within that, build houses and travel in our cars based on gravity. How about buoyancy? We used to think that buoyancy was what you made something out of. If it was made out of wood that floated, that would float, that's how something would float. And we came to the understanding that it was a displacement, that it didn't matter what it was made of, that if it displaced a certain amount of water, it could float. So you can take something very heavy, displacing the water, like how do these huge, these tankers, aircraft carrier or cruise ships, how do they float if they're not all made of styrofoam or something that floats? Because they displace a certain amount of water. That's the law of flotation. There's a law of aerodynamics. Don't get me going in the laws here, But we start to understand in stage 2 consciousness that there are laws, and when we work within those laws, we can make certain things happen. Like attracts like. If we start thinking in the direction of our dreams, not concentrating on what the challenge is, not to deny it, but not to give it any more power, we start being a channel through which that power can flow. Which brings us to our stage 3. Being a channel or an instrument, being an opening where consciousness lives, one who is surrendering or allowing consciousness to use them, letting go of a belief. I've heard it said, use me. oh God. I want to be the conduit through which the infinite flows. This is how a prosperity consciousness, that if you start giving, you create a vacuum of giving that you are given to more, because that's the way that law works. You become a conduit through which, and the infinite is always looking for the most receptive conduit. Just like if your battery on your car has a short in one of the terminals, it won't work as well. We get that when we go to start our car and it doesn't start. We start to learn how electricity works, don't we? Call Auto Club or a friend and say, oh, you got a bad terminal here or a bad battery. But if everything's hooked up correctly, you have a current. You have a energetic that can flow a certain way. That's why when we start to give with love, see, it's not just that we give, it's also the attitude in which we give with that makes a difference. When we give with love, we are given to in love. You know, there's Edwene Gaines, who's one of our prosperity teachers from Unity. People would ask her, she's determined to be to change the consciousness of giving on earth. That's one of her things. That's her thing in life. I mean, what a thing to take on, right? She wants to change the consciousness of abundance on earth. Because we don't have a supply problem. We have a distribution problem, right? There's plenty to go around. It's just not getting everywhere it needs to be. And she would, people would say, well, do I need to give net or gross of my paycheck? And she goes, come on, tightwad. Do you want to be given to net or gross? Just asking. I'm not saying one is good or one is bad. It's, what do you believe? What works for you? When you want to be given to, don't you want to be given to with love? Wouldn't you rather someone say, hey, I love you and I want you to have this, rather than, just take it. Just do it. All right, you need this, take it. There's an attitude of giving. And we need to look at how we give. So are you a conduit through which the infinite would flow? And how do we become a better conduit? How do we keep our modality clean? How do we keep the pipe from rusting? Right? How do we keep the bucket without a hole in it? Right? Which brings us to our stage 4 consciousness. Oneness. Being the infinite in form. Oh. Right? Where you step into, you ever been in the zone? You ever been playing a game or maybe typing on the computer or doing your art or whatever is your thing, and some power comes over you. Something happens. Like I've heard people that are athletes where they felt that they weren't really in their bodies during the time that they were running the track, that something was moving them in a power they couldn't explain. And they weren't even picking their feet up and putting it down. They were gliding. They were being moved around the track in a way that they couldn't explain. I know I play music, I play bass, and I've had that experience where you're in a band and everything's on time and the music sounds good, and I say to myself, oh, I'm in the zone, I'm doing it, and that's when I mess up. That's when I mess up, right? Because I'm like, oh, it's happening. Where'd it go? Is because I all of a sudden thought that I was doing it, right? For a second I became conscious that maybe I'm doing this. And it's not me. That's when we have to really let go and let God. And we strive for those times, don't we? Don't you look for that time when you're like, oh, when you're being lived by the essence that created you. It's so powerful. So powerful. But I can tell you that I can step into that consciousness and step right back into the victim with one word, oh yeah, what happened? I'm the victim, wee. But it's okay. That's why we're here, right? But now that you know the certain levels of consciousness, and again, there are stages in between these. These are not like a stair step. These mold together and mesh and flow, but we look for that consciousness of being it, to having that energetic flow in our lives in a way that makes sense. I mean, I would say that that's kind of why we come to these centers for spiritual living, is that we want to know that there is a power, and that when we learn to get our bloated nothingness out of the way, as Emerson would say, my bloated nothingness gets in my way quite often, but less and less, right? As I start to be aware of it, I can deflate that bloated nothingness, or the ego, ego, edging God out, and relax and let it flow. And something happens when we do that. So, again, the stages are, stage 1 is to us, the victim consciousness. Stage 2 is to it by us, the manifester or manipulator consciousness. We start to manipulate these laws in a way that we start to understand that there are laws and how to use them. Stage 3 is through us. We become a channel through which the consciousness can express itself. And then stage 4 is as us. Being consciousness. And we've got lots of classes here and lots of ways to understand how that rolls in your life. But being aware that you are a spiritual being having a human incarnation. We used to think that I was a physical being, and once in a while I'd have a little spiritual experience. But when we look at it differently, that we are spiritual beings, what if this right here that we're experiencing right now as our life is the temporal experience? What if this is temporary? Right, that we're only, this much of us is in the water right now, and the rest of us is somewhere else. But being this much in this experience makes us forget the rest of who we are, so that we can have this experience fully. That's why when something happens, we're very upset by it. My life fell apart. But when we can see that our lives are much bigger things, we are spiritual giants that have decided to take on these individual incarnations so that we can have an experience. What if we agreed to have a certain experience because of who and what we are? One of my past relationships, when I first came into this teaching, I realized that one of my teachers said, what if she broke up with you and you had this terrible experience that moved you into Science of Mind, and that was the only way you would have gotten it, was that 2x4 that hit you upside the head. Now I know that I don't need a 2x4 to hit me upside the head, and I don't have that in my life anymore. Now it comes with love and tenderness and little breeze on my face. Yeah, right. Well, let me just say that there are other ways to learn. It doesn't have to be a 2x4. We just need to get the message. So what is the message that life is telling you now through your creative genius of challenge? Whatever challenge you're walking through, there is a pearl of wisdom in it. And when we can take and find that pearl of wisdom, so ask your challenge, what are you trying to tell me? What is your gift? You're no longer a suitable host for the challenge to appear. You've gotten the message, it's been heeded, and you've taken other action in your life to move you in a different direction. This is how we have a miracle of a cancer remission, where 1 week somebody had a cancer, or see the answer in their life, and they got the message that it was giving them, and they had a change of consciousness. They go back 2 weeks later, and the doctor can't find it in their body. How does that happen? You're no longer a suitable host. The body will diminish anything that's not usable and expel it the way it sees properly. Sometimes we need an operation, but sometimes we can do it ourselves. And we can do it in the body of our affairs too, when we get the message from whatever the challenge is that's coming up, and we make a change in our life. We put down the gun, we put down the knife, we put down the bottle, and we look in a different direction. We become a more suitable host for the energy of love to flourish. Do you see that? It's so powerful, isn't it? It's so powerful. So, this is how we use it. Start acting as though your particular situation or challenge is not there anymore. And again, this isn't to deny that it's there, not to give it any more arena to flourish. Cut it off. Cut your challenge off and go, what's the solution to this challenge? And what does it feel like? And start living in the feeling nature of the resolution. It's a very powerful consciousness to move into. By the renewing of our minds. By the renewing of our minds. So, we use it by our belief. What do you believe? And here's a really good one, a zinger. You can't demonstrate outside the level of your belief. You can't do it. But by changing what we input, we can slowly shift that belief into a new understanding. That's how we have transformation in our life. That's where something gets to the point where I've had it up to here and I'm not going to take it anymore. You know, anger is good when used in the right way that moves you in a different direction in your life. It's when it's used in hostility and challenge that it's a bad thing. It's when we act out in a way that doesn't make sense. But when it moves us, anger can move us into our next greatest yet to be, if we will heed its call. We must listen. Ask your anger, what are you trying to tell me? What is it that we need to do? And move in that direction. So, in conclusion, I'd like to read you a treatment that's in the 4th chapter of this textbook. It's in the textbook on page 56, and it's paragraph 4 for those on the video that are looking in your textbook. But this will be my treatment for today. So let's go ahead and dim the lights and let me read this to you. So closing your eyes if that's comfortable for you, or taking a soft focus on the flowers or the candles or whatever. I will just read from our textbook. And it says this. These are in quotations. I am a center in the divine mind, a point of God-conscious life, truth, and action. My affairs are divinely guided and guarded into right action, into correct results. Everything I do, say, or think is stimulated by the truth. There is power in this word that I speak because it is of the truth and it is the truth. There is perfect and continuous right action in my life and my affairs. All belief in wrong action is dispelled and made negative. Right action alone has power, and right action is power, and power is God, the living Spirit, Almighty. This Spirit animates everything that I do, say, or think. Ideas come to me daily, and these ideas are divine ideas. They direct me and sustain me without effort. I am continuously directed. I am compelled to do the right thing at the right time and to say the right word at the right time, to follow the right course at all times. All suggestion of age or poverty, limitation or unhappiness is uprooted from my mind and cannot gain entrance to my thought. I am happy, well, and filled with perfect life. I live in the spirit of truth, and I am conscious that the truth of spirit lives in me. My word is the law unto its own manifestation, and I will bring to me, or cause me to be brought to its fulfillment. There is no unbelief, no doubt, no uncertainty. I know that I know that I know. Let every thought of doubt vanish from my mind, that I may know the truth, and the truth will make me free. And so it is.